All right, thanks everyone for joining today. Simon could not join us today, but I have wonderful news. Aporva Baxi, his business partner, executive creative director, and co-founder of DixonBaxi, is here to replace him. And we're very fortunate to have him with us today. So what I'm going to do is just go through a couple of logistical stuff, and then we go straight into it, okay? So with me today, I have Vanessa, who is the resource manager at BN, and also the manager of the initiative. And also with me today is Andrea Gendusa. He's a mentorship director for the Flyers on the Wall program. And he's also going to help me facilitating the Fireside Chat today. And so for today's agenda, what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick intro, and then we're going to go through a case study that Aporva has curated for us today. We're going to tackle the topic of what is the role of motion in branding. And then after that, we have a few structured questions to get us, started, warmed up. At that point, I'm going to play the role of the creative director, and then Andrea will jump in as well. And we're going to have some fun with some questions. We're going to make it a bit challenging for Aporva. And after that, I'm going to open up the floor. And at that point, I'm just going to call out the most voted questions, and then Andrea would take turn, and we go through it like that. And then, if you guys have questions in the chat, just put it up. And we see something interesting, we're going to call you out to ask and talk to Aporva directly. Okay, so I know Aporva Baxi from his days at the design firm Attic. If you guys have ever heard of Attic, back in the 90s, if you were studying graphic design in school, or you are working in the field of graphic design, Attic was the legendary design studio. They were doing a lot of cutting-edge graphic design work, and they had these book series called Noise Books, and everyone wanted to get their hands on them. Aporva actually helped establish Attic's offices in San Francisco and later in New York. And all in these roles, he worked on large campaigns for global brands like Sony, Ford, and Levi's, to name a few. And I heard, Aporva, that you and Simon actually left at the same day to form DixonBaxi, and that was interesting. Today, DixonBaxi is a world-renowned branding agency with a diverse team based out of the UK, and with an exciting portfolio spanning 25 years. I believe I've heard that it's like 25 years overnight success is the line for DixonBaxi. So Aporva, with that, I'd like to pass the mic over to you to tell a little bit about you, DixonBaxi, and many motion-centric brands such as like MTV, Hulu, Tubi, Channel 4, and even in sports like F1 and AC Milan that you worked with over the years.
Well, look, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join. I certainly can't replace Simon, but I certainly will try my best to stand in for him. He apologizes that he can't be here. You're probably looking forward to seeing him, but we've worked together. We actually just celebrated our 30 years of working together. So it's an awful long time. And, thanks, Hung, for that introduction. That's just a small part of it. Just as a bit of context, Simon and I, as I said, have known each other for a long time. So we kind of see ourselves as brothers as much as creative partners. And we started DixonBaxi in 2001. So we're approaching our 25th year. Thanks for the early birthday shout. But that's another 18 months away or so on. But look, in that time, our focus has always been on creating brands at scale. When we began, we actually made a list of things we would do and we wouldn't do. And those principles are things that have formed part of our ethos for the last 20 plus years. We have a team of just over 50. We're based in London. We work internationally. 70% of our work is, global. A lot of it is in the States, but we worked all over the world, and that really suits us. We've always enjoyed immersing ourselves in different cultures, understanding different people. And although we work with clients and different businesses, the real client is people, the audience, right? It's the the people we work for. We want to create things that delight the person on the street. And we're lucky enough to work on brands that reach millions or billions of people, which sounds highly abstract when you're sitting in the studio. But then when you're out in the world or using some of these products, you realize that all of those thousands of decisions that you made count. And I guess the root of what we do is focus on the idea of invention. So invention, play, the idea of rejecting convention, you know, the idea that brave brands can change the world is really important to us. To give you a context of where we sit in the firmament of kind of brands and where companies come and, you know, talk to us, is if you took a scale of 1 is evolution and 10 is revolution, we sit between 5 and 10. So it's that space where things dramatically change, and those kind of approaches or thoughts help clients understand how we can help them. And then the other thing that we do, as I said, is work on systems at scale. So that includes the entire experience, and a big part of that is motion. So I'm super excited to talk to you guys about that. Motion has been indelibly part of who we are from day one. Simon and myself started as graphic designers, actually. So, you know, that pure sort of craft on the page, you know, that Swiss design or the stuff when we were at Attic is about deconstructing that and just messing around and seeing what we create. But at the root, we've always kind of been drawn to film. That's how Simon and I kind of became friends, really. It's the love of film, particularly films like 2001 and Space Odyssey and so on and so forth. But the idea of telling stories has been a clear part of what we do. And one of the first projects we did was for MTV2. So that was our first client. And the whole project is motion driven, but we did two things. One, our presentation was a painting, so no motion. We painted what it would feel like as a 9-foot by 3-foot triptych, and that was our presentation. The second thing is the whole thing was made in Flash. If you remember Flash. Yeah.
Yes.
So we like the twitchiness of Flash. Although this was supposed to be on TV, we loved the fact that it had a sort of unpredictable twitchiness. And the whole system was statements. It was statements that we found. So this is before Twitter and you know, all the stuff that we're used to. So we just pulled statements from blogs like MTV2 makes me want to smoke blue tack, you know, a random stuff like that, and attributed to the person. But the entire channel with 3-second statements, irreverent, stupid, funny. And so I always go back to that because it captured a bunch of things that I think will be relevant to this conversation. One is that motion can elicit emotion, that it is done with intention, and also that it has attitude. So one thing that we talk about a lot is the attitude and the swagger or the style that imparts something that is relevant for that brand. So it's an experience. So rather than just moving things for the sake of it, we try and do it with an intention that means that it's unmistakably that experience. So there's some of the things that we do. And I guess to wrap up on us, you know, as we say, we're about to enter our 25th year. You know, we've got lots of things to look forward to. One is that in a month or so, we have a 500-page book that we're bringing out that captures the last 18 months of the work that we're doing. And the reason for a book, it goes back to maybe the days when we're making books in the mid-90s. We still love the craft of the tangible qualities of something like that. But then, you know, when you guys hopefully see it, you'll see that the pages themselves feel like they are a frame in motion. They have an energy and a spirit that feels as if it's in mid-stride, you know, a studio in mid-stride. So I guess that's our ethos, is to always look forward, to be always in beta, to look at what's next. And that's what Simon and I are really excited about, and what we try and create the space for. Although it's DixonBaxi, it's really the space between us that is interesting, and that's filled with collaborators, the team, the clients, the work. So our role now is to make sure that we help stay relevant in the world with brands and so on, but also create the space for great stuff to happen.
I love that. What I also love about DixonBaxi, is that it feels like you have thought through every aspect of the brand when you design it, including motion. Because for people like us who work in motion design and animation, there are many companies and large enterprises who come to us after because the brand lacked that component. They never develop motion as part of their brand. And they come to us and say, hey, can you do that part of it? And it's like a patch into something that should have been thought of from the beginning. And then, of course, there are agencies out there that specialize in just motion branding. And to me, that's also a patchwork to address the problem that, hey, we cannot keep up with what's going on. Help us, versus thinking it through from the get-go, from the beginning. So since our topic today is, the role of motion in branding, and of course your love of film, I want to kind of change the format a bit and think of the presentation today like the memento of the film, right? We take Act 3 and we throw it into Act 1. I hope you have a case study to show us like what motion looks like for branding. Let's start with that.
Okay, great, thanks. What I'm going to show you is we work with a lot of entertainment brands, sports brands, and typically you'd think that, and rightly so, they live on TV, they live on devices. So motion is integral to that. When we work with TNT Sports or AC Milan or Premier League, motion is storytelling in those spaces, and it allows us to bring to life, not only the experience, but the emotion of those experiences. The one I'm going to talk through is actually Formula One. We've been working with them for the last year on evolving their brand. And if you may be familiar with them, as a fan, there's Drive to Survive. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's the movie with Brad Pitt. It's kind of everywhere at the moment. So it's kind of a dream project and client for us. So I'm going to walk you through that. But the way I've set it up is that it's going to give you a picture of the brand and what we do and how motion is integrated into that, as opposed to just purely motion. So you can understand the link that Hung was just talking about, where you design a brand, no one's made it move, and then you have to make it move. So we want to just demonstrate how those two work together. So hopefully you can see that screen. It says ignore the noise and create the signal. Is that right? Can you see that? Yep, I'm seeing some nods. Was there a hand up? No? Okay, great. Ignore the noise. Yeah, so let's go to Formula One. So we started in 2001, as I said, but in 2004 was our first contact with Formula One. And we got this email. We'd like you to reimagine the F1 race information system. As you can imagine, we were like, fuck yeah, this is an amazing, we're both fans of motorsport. To get this kind of note from Formula One, just in our infancy, was quite something. So that said a lot. There's Simon. So he's saying hi. That was our studio back in the day. We were just on one desk in a serviced office. So it was very unglamorous to what we have now, I guess. But we had big ambitions. And the Formula One thing was really interesting because we love the sport. And if you recognize the race graphics, it's the stuff you see, the furniture and information system you see when the race is on. The commentators use it to commentate the race. The viewers around the world use it to know what's happening. So it's really important. And it hadn't been changed for 20 years. It was really, really antiquated. So we had the opportunity of reinventing the entire experience. So by watching the race, we were able to decide how to reimagine the race experience and how to communicate that, how to take all of the telemetry, the data from the cars, and then create a system that allows us to make that just more not only flexible, but also add emotion and story to the race. So we did a whole bunch of things. We did the titles for Formula One, and we did the race system as well. And the way we thought about it was like we called it a 4D grid. So, you know, you have the screen and then you have all of the graphics around that. But the 4D part was time. And time, as you know, is the ability to choreograph events. So it allowed us to do a number of things. One, it tapped into the fact that, you know, we had studied pure design, infographics, grid systems. So we're able to bring a level of craft in a way that, you know, these types of race graphics hadn't been seen. So we saw it as a graphic design project, but also we saw it as a project to articulate all sorts of things from G-force to braking to, you know, who's in the race to tables and so on. And that meant that there was a combination of craft, technology, and invention. And the ability to choreograph that meant that we were able to think about when these bits of information come up in the race. So if you think about motion, you know, the whole piece is storytelling, but this is storytelling across 2 hours of a race, and to create a sense of cadence and sense of story around key moments. So that's what happened back in 2004. And then 2 decades later, they called again. You know, can we have a chat about the future of F1? And again, you know, we kind of shouted from the rooftops on that one. But the challenge here was to design and evolve the system to flex for everyone. So Formula One reaches billions of people across the world. You know, it's got fans that are really mad into it. And then in places like the States, you've got new fans that are into the celebrity and the scale of it. So when we start a project, before we kind of figure out, you know, what the brand is about, we go there. So, you know, a big thing for us is to become a fan. Fortunately, a lot of our team are already fans. But going to a race, going backstage, going to the paddock club, just experience it from the fans' point of view or from a celebrity's point of view, or, you know, we were able to do the pit walk, meet some of the teams. That's an amazing experience that we can take back to the studio. So the idea that we're taking influence from the environment, the world, the sound, the smells, that all goes into the design system, the motion system, the experience system. And so this is a big part of, you know, how we approach projects. I've got to say, you know, the Formula One work was originally, this kind of new brand was developed by Wyden & Kennedy, the ad agency, in 2017. So we're standing on the shoulder of giants, but it was time to kind of evolve the brand to reflect where it was going next. And a big part for us, you know, is creativity and invention. But the thing is that we really need to make sure that we tap into insight, you know, and the insight turns our instinct, our intuition into real world impact. And so we have a lot of data, you know, there's kind of, whether it's the brief from the client, whether it's audience data, demographics, and so on. And for Formula One, it really does reach the world. You've got an audience in Europe that might be into the information, the technical aspects. You know, in Asia, it's different. In America, it's about the celebrity and the scale. In LATAM, it's a mix. And so, as I was saying before, we have to see our client as the fan, the person that's trackside or the person that's watching, you know, in Mexico City or Kuala Lumpur, or wherever they are. So we need to think globally as much as, you know, for F1 itself. And so this is how we begin. So one of our design directors who led this, Tasha, we kind of gave her a couple of weeks just to feel liberated and untethered. So a lot of our work starts with pure expression. So we're not trying to solve it. We're not trying to say, okay, you know, this is the idea. This was about spirit, about attitude. What does Formula One mean? What's it mean for the fans? Who's the fan like? How can we deconstruct it? So this is really about spirit and attitude. And we put this up on our wall in the studio. In fact, all of our projects live in the studio. And so it becomes kind of a call to action. It sets the tone for the work. So we think that that's hugely important. And these are just some of the kind of moments of that. It's raw, it's lo-fi, you know, we ask ourselves kind of key questions as we get into it. And then it starts to refine, you know, we start packaging this stuff up so that we find vocabulary that tells some of that story, whether it's art direction, you know, graphic systems, and so on. And you can kind of see, you know, how these elements start to layer and how we start to refine and bring some of the stories together. And, you know, just to give you an insight into the studio, you know, I was talking about the ethos of a team working together. We don't have siloed teams. So we have our motion team, you know, our design team, our strategy team, producers, all working together. And these are campfires in the studio. So it's an opportunity to talk about the work in an open forum and look at it objectively. You know, are we really communicating what we want? What do we love? And it's oftentimes motion that is the thing that unlocks the idea. So, you know, one of the guys took the logo and did something with it, and we're like, hang on a minute, there's something in that. And from there, we can kind of figure out a system. And that system was this. We took the logo, and you probably see it, you know, yourself. You're like, hang on a minute, that seems quite obvious, but it was perfect for us. There's a racing line in the identity of the F1, and we felt that that was very simple, you know, clear expression of what Formula One is. You know, the racing line is the fastest line through the circuit. It's an extension of the identity, and it becomes something that's unmistakably F1. You know, it becomes a visual attribution to the brand. And when we think about the brand as a whole, we had this challenge of holding on to the iconic, but being audacious. And it's very rare to have a client say to you, you know what, be audacious and have fun with it and show us that stretch. And this was a motion test that one of the guys did. It was this idea of having the whole of Formula One, if you can, there's no sound on this, but with sound, it sounds amazing. But how can you compress the entire experience into 3 seconds and communicate that? So this is what we often do. Although we're creating systems of scale, it's something like this that compresses a whole presentation and a story into something that feels like, hang on a minute, I can see now how this could become an identifiable system for a brand like Formula One. So that these moments are really powerful for us, and we bake them in early into the process. So as Hung was saying, it's not something we patch on. It's you know, from the first presentation. But the reality is this. So, you know, we're not just kind of creating some aesthetics. We're thinking about the brand story, the colors, the patterns, the sub-brand, the textures. So there are thousands of elements that we have to orchestrate into something that feels entirely seamless that in-house teams can use. So that's one reality. And then the other is the details. So going back to the craft that I was talking about in the 2004 work, you know, we still think about the detail and how all these elements orchestrate together. So this is a little snapshot of a moment of the digital guidelines. And then it's also about storytelling. So motion is the ability to articulate ideas and stories. So this is the 75th anniversary of Formula One. So we're able to create the 75 and tell that you know, story with a new logo system. But equally, bottom right there, if you can see that, a little small vignettes that allow us to bake in the narrative and the story of why we're creating even just a simple logo edition like this. And motion allows us to do that. So in these moments, we're starting to bake in what we think might be the principles in the motion story. You know, what makes F1 F1? How do we create a sense of inertia or a sense of control? Or how do we get a sense of dynamism? You know, what does 200 miles an hour feel like? So those are the types of questions we're asking as we're developing kind of the motion language. And then, of course, you know, it's great to see the identity come to life on, in this case, an F1 car in their lobby. So these moments are kind of pinch me moments. But getting back to the system, you know, we think about the logo. I talked about the racing line. We have other elements like the ticker or patterns. And then we think about how all these elements come together from a craft point of view. There's a hierarchy to that storytelling, and we've introduced different typefaces. So the big shift here was moving it from feeling highly technical to adding some warmth and texture. And this is probably a bit you've been waiting for, is some of the motion that we're kind of working on. And we tend to work in tonal scales. So we think about motion with intention. Behind this are a series of very simple principles that are easily shareable. They don't tell you exactly what to move, but they tell you how it should feel. And in this case, we wanted a sense of control. So, we've got motion that has got a snap to it. There's a pop, and then there's the audacious, where we're building in some of the glitch effects. We've got some of the bloom effects. The pattern systems in the middle are all part of it, and they create, as I said, this sense of data meets emotion, and it's just a really interesting place to play. But before we get to this, there's just a ton of work and exploration to kind of refine it. And this is how it kind of all comes together. We have to think about how we connect with fans on every level. So this isn't just about, motion on an app or on a screen trackside. It's about, every aspect of that, from track to the world. And we're thinking about how the motion weaves from, the fans waving a flag to the fan zone to the next generation with the baby and the merch to bring them into it, to special kind of things for the Paddock Club, to merch and future applications as well. And, this is kind of a big reveal for the brand. So I don't know if you're familiar with the O2 here in the UK, but it's a big arena, fills 20,000, and they launched the brand in February this year. And for the first time, they had the 10 teams and the 20 drivers introduced. So this was a huge setup. So if you can imagine all those screens alive with the brand, with the racing line. So that's, again, a choreography. And I think, something to say with things like this, oftentimes with motion, I've seen some of the stuff that, Being do, and it's beautiful. And there's an immersive storytelling aspect. In this case, it's different. It's actually more reductive. Sometimes scale means you have to dial it back. You have to be confident in its simplicity. So I find that very interesting in the need to find the moments where you can be highly expressive and fully immersive versus when you've got to dial it back and be really simple. And then things like this are really fun, creating the environments in motion and in static for things like the drivers. So they're kind of pinch me moments, down to what happens on screens in Vegas, to, as I said, tracks around the world, the motion systems, and they've got screens everywhere. So if you can imagine going into a lounge for AMG Mercedes or a Ferrari lounge, you've got video walls everywhere. So what we're trying to do for the brand is create story moments, little bit history for the track, a reveal for the driver, moments that celebrate heritage. And so that's how all of these motion elements start to come together. So it feels like one unified F1 experience that's unmistakably F1, rather than, hey, there's just some cool motion there. There's the obligatory merch. They've done some great collabs and so on, and digital experiences, just to piece everything together. And this is kind of a little bit of a sizzle. I guess you can get a sense of some of the energy of the brand. You can see how the racing line forms the basis for introducing and framing content. The script typeface adds a bit of personality. The pattern systems add texture. They soften some of the hardness of the brand. The ticker systems build in story and texture. So there's a lot going on here, but at the same time, it's all about that choreography and when to use these moments. So you've got to see this in the context of a circuit, of a race, in someone's hand, as they're on the bus trying to book tickets. we think about the broader context. So maybe a little bit longer than 5 minutes, but hopefully that gives you a little flavor on that project. So happy to answer questions on any of that.
Oh, yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, so when I think I have so many takeaways, right? Like, be the audience before you be the fan before you start the project, right?
Right.
And then of course I love how you guys use scale, like the idea of going from something really concrete to audacious, like that grounds the effort really well, and kind of like get everyone on the same page. I love the signal and noise. And on that topic, Aporva, a lot of our motion flyers are just out of school. They really want to know, I don't have a clear direction of like, how do I get there, right? What do I need to do today to get there? And for some context, I want to share something that I found that you and Simon did. It's called the do's and don'ts list. I'm not sure whose handwriting this is, but I'm hoping this is acting. So I will read all of it, but I just want to use this as like a point of inspiration.
Sure.
And I have a tough question for you, right?
Okay.
Looking back at this today, where you are today, how many of these you think you stay true to today?
It's a good question. Yeah, for context, guys, this was a list that we wrote when we started. It was a list of things we won't do and will do. And the reason we did that when we began, we just wanted the basis for it's kind of a loose set of principles to guide us, to allow us to make the right choices and to define and create the business that we wanted to create. I think, the thing is, we hold on to a lot of these. I think what's happened is that they have evolved, refined, and changed. But to answer your question, I think a lot of the ones on the right still are relevant. Be original. It's really hard to, you have to be original in the context of what's happening in culture. Everyone sees everything, so it's how you edit those references, to create something original. Define your own destiny. Absolutely. We're in control of that. I mean, we as in the collective, in this group, anyone that's watching, there is an opportunity for us to shape that, even in small ways to get to where we want. Design for everyone, design everywhere. I think we're doing that. We're lucky enough to, like, F1 is a good example of that. Embrace change, has become always in beta. It's the idea that, we're never static. If we were the same as we were 20 plus years ago, I think, we may not be here. And be true to ourselves. Absolutely. I think that's a personal goal as much as a company one. Be independent. We still are. Ambitious, definitely. Only work directly with the decision maker. Okay, that's a broad one. It doesn't always happen. But what we try and do is get to that person, or go far upstream as possible, or create such a compelling reason that they feel like they have to make a decision. The last one's silly. Answer the phone in 3 rings. I don't know if we quite do that, but the reason for that was when we began, Simon and I decided actually we're just going to stay as 2 for a long time. We stayed 2 for like quite a few years. And that was because we wanted to get back to the purity of design, of having that one-to-one contact with the people we're working with. And so when you called us, it would be Simon and I going, "Hi, DixonBaxi, how can we help?" And we felt that just held us to task. On the left, look, I think all those things are still valid. Certainly don't believe your own hype. It doesn't matter if we're the 24-year overnight success. The world throws all sorts of things at you, so you have to stay on your toes. Definitely don't work just for money. We kind of think about it as people first. It's people first, then design. And if you do those things right, then hopefully profit will come. I think you got to feed the soul. You got to make the space for others to thrive. If you do those things, then everything else will come. The others, I still think are relevant in many ways, So largely the same, but also written differently as we become more sophisticated and evolved.
Awesome. So thank you so much for that. I think, you know, the lesson for a lot of students coming out of school is if you intend to work to become a brand designer, you should have a very clear vision of who you are. What is your brand to start out with? Yeah. I mean, that clarity has to be baked in before you do work for others.
It's true. Although I would say that this list is like, you know, it's great to look back on a list, you know, because you've got the hindsight and said, yeah, we achieved that. When we were writing it, it was what we felt was right. I think if you're starting out or on your journey, as we were here, I think it's great to have conviction. And if you got it, you know, listen to that quiet voice, trust in what you want to do and listen to it because it's probably saying the right thing. Equally, I wouldn't put the pressure on you to say you have figured it out. We have folks here who start as a producer and become a strategist, start as a designer that become a motion creative. So I think you definitely, a career is long. And so I think to have passion, that like the root things, passion and energy to make things, or a curiosity, they're more powerful than knowing specifically that you want to be a brand designer. I mean, if that's what you want to do, then great. But I would allow yourself some room.
Love that. Okay, so a bit of role playing here. Andrea, she's going to be the motion art director.
Yeah,
who has worked with a lot of brands.
Said yesterday that you were thinking about the coverage map
I gotta
one.
mute someone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So do that.
Andrea is going to play the motion art director, and he has been working with brands who did not have very good brand guidelines, right? So he's going to ask you a very tactical question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. Okay, Aporva. So what qualities make a motion brand system strong both graphically and in motion, and how can a motion designer evaluate if their work aligns with these qualities during production?
So your question is, what makes
the system stronger graphically and in motion, and what a designer can do to stay aligned with these qualities during production?
Okay, yeah, good question. So the way we approach it, you know, others may do it differently, is that because we're thinking about a brand, you know, a brand often has and should have a strategy that drives it, you know, kind of some values, a point of view, a way of being. So that's one place to start. So we need to make sure everything that we do reflects that in some way, but not in a hyper literal way. You literally don't want to see the strategy on the page. So there's that. But I think the way we try and approach it is twofold. One is principles. So if we think about motion, we typically kind of do 3 or 4 motion principles, and they are higher order ideas that reflect the tonality, the sense of feeling, the quality of movement, you know, kind of something with a weighty momentum, or something with, you know, snap and pop, or whatever it is. So you have some root things that you can go back to that put you in a space. And then there are more tactical things, which is, okay, these are literal examples of what to do and what not to do, going back to that list. So oftentimes we make a lot of best examples of how to make something move. And we do it 2 ways. One, the guys often do a lot of kits, and those kits are sometimes scripted to make it really easy, like drag and drop. So, you know, if there is a team that isn't that gifted in After Effects or whatever, then it's just pick a color, write the type, you know, drag the image, it will just do the thing. Other times, you know, for folks that have a motion team and so on, then what we're doing is giving them kind of that tool set, you know, to plug and play. So I think in answer to your question, there's 2 things. One is, have we created a brand strong enough to allow for flex? Because we work with brands that live on social, that live on screens, that live in campaigns. And if we've given them such a narrow tool set, what tends to happen, as with any designer or creative, they're like, yeah, who needs the guidelines? I'll just do one. I'm bored of those. I'm just going to make something I want to make. And then there's no brand, there's just stuff. So what you want to do is create enough rules to support the consistency, but enough space for creatives to create new campaigns, to create new stories. So I think that's the best way of doing it. And I think the more sophisticated you are as a motion creative, the more room you should have. And if the team is, that doesn't have those skills, then we keep locking it down so that there really is no room. Did that answer your question?
Yes. How much is the percentage about structure and free of the interpretation of the brand?
Yeah. It's sort of like, we call it fix and flex. So fix systems and then flex. So fix, it allows you to, okay, you know what, logo always here. This is the logo animation, don't mess with it. Or it's an end tag, right, with a sonic signature. So when we did 2B, it goes 2B, 2B. You got to use that. That's 2 seconds. So you lost 2 seconds from your promo. The rest of your promo, do what you want, but use these type slates. So I think it's less a percentage. It's almost like, if you're doing a promo, let's say, you want the tone to be right. So then what we might do is give direction on editing and cadence, those types of things. But we need to give room. So I would love to say that, you'd fix about 30% and leave room for 70. I think clients would like 80% fixed and 20%. I think the reality.
Yeah,
because we're building the brand, we feel very comfortable with it. But I think what happens when you're building a brand of scale, it's very easy to forget that teams, we're working with a team in Sao Paulo at the moment, and in New York and LA. We briefed someone in Spain. And so they all approach things differently. So a client typically wants to close up room for anything to break, especially on a global scale. And then what happens? So I guess a more nuanced answer to your question, at global scale, I would say it's 80-20. For campaigns, like big campaigns, that opens out. So if you think about Spotify Wrapped campaign, they're gonna say, you know what, you can have some fun here. But everywhere else, they'll close it up.
Okay, thanks you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Aporva. I'm going to open up the floor for Q&A, but I want to ask Aporva firstly, do you have a heart out in 15 minutes so we can plan accordingly?
No, let me check.
Okay.
I think I'm okay, but you never know. I'm okay, unless someone bundles into this room because it's a meeting room, but I'm okay.
Awesome. Okay. That gives us a bit more time for the Q&A. So I'm going to start by asking the most voted questions in the questions sheet that we have here. After that, the floor is open. You raise your hand, ask question. Whoever goes first, you can ask the question directly to Aporva. So if Ivan Kromar, are you here? If not, then I'm going to ask the question. Okay. The question is, what do you think is the future of motion in branding?
Yeah, great question. To be honest, actually, we kind of have these existential questions about what is the future of design and creativity. The question I get all the time from clients is, first question, so what do you think about AI? As I'm sure we all have. The thing is, I'm pretty, I think as a company and personally, pretty optimistic about that. There is things that we see, all of the LLMs, all of the systems that can appear scary. And I will say though that the human intervention, the human aspect, the craft, the storytelling, the ability to convince people that this is the right way. So if I bring it back to kind of the world that we occupy, the world of brand, it isn't simply just making the thing move. However beautiful it is, it's very hard to convince clients, people on the other side of the screen who are invested in this, of an idea without a reason. I think, these tools will allow us to do things faster, maybe experiment in different ways. But I really think there's still an opportunity to magnify the power of story, the power of intention, the reason why things work. And oftentimes, there's this race for fidelity, for things to look hyper 3D or like, beautiful in one way. But the world isn't one way, motion isn't one way. You can have stop motion, you can have, textured stuff, you can have, does it all have to be the same? And I think there are two things that are going to happen. We're going to see, as we see in design, as I'm sure you see in motion, everyone can get to good really quickly, whether they're using Figma, pre-built, things in Houdini or After Effects or filters. So everyone can do that. But I think what's going to happen is how you graduate beyond that. How are you going to invent and use these things to remix that reality to make something greater? So if you think about it as a pyramid, the stuff at the bottom, the commoditized stuff, I'd probably say, unfortunately, some of that stuff's going to be easier to do different ways, but it's going to hopefully push everyone up to think about their craft more deeply. And I always say that, ultimately we are still talking to clients, right? So they still have to be part of that story and convinced. And I've never just shown something and without explanation, without understanding why we're making something and it's been bought. And it has to be part of a big story. Just kind of a long-winded way of saying, I'm pretty optimistic. I think it will challenge and put a flame under everyone to do better. But actually, just as a side note, we got super excited because I just saw the trailer for season 2 of Blue-Eyed Samurai. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the trailer's just out and everyone got a bit crazy about it. You see that who's making that with AI or whatever, this is where I think we need to live is look at those types of things for the inspiration to find those new stories or ways of doing things. And I think, we all have the opportunity to do that. So although on the one hand, you could think of it as some existential crisis, I think the idea of motion, if you turn that to story and emotion and, creating delightful moments or experiences or immersing people in something, then I think, the runway is, not that, the AI, no AI pun there, but the runway is long. We've got a lot of space to play.
Cool. Yeah. So Jacob Alton is there? No? Okay. So one question. When designing a logo, how often are some of them designed for the purpose being in motion rather than being designed as static logo and the motion coming up later?
Yeah, good question. It's interesting. Sometimes we inherit a logo. So if you take a brand like F1 or Hulu, there's too much equity in that logo. So what often happens is that we have to find the story in that identity that wasn't there before. So with F1, it was the racing line. With Hulu, it became the vessel. And motion is critical there because although we can do it in static, the Hulu thing only came to life when the motion just kind of just pushed us in. And this green kind of, pulse of color came. And F1, the F1 becoming the racing line. So we try and do it hand in hand. So, I showed you the campfire. In that first session, the motion team will be there. And even if there isn't a logo, they're moving basic shapes. So sometimes, the the basic shape might reveal a way to do something. It's obviously hard to design a logo if it's a form in motion. However, I will say we've made something in motion that has become a motion identity. Do you see what I mean? So, you know, someone moves something, it has a character. In fact, we just did one, or we're doing one, which has got some typography, and the typography was animated as a character, almost like a Disney-esque character. And suddenly we're like, wow, in these 3 letters, we didn't see personality. And so it's changed the entire approach to that. So I think it's interrelated. And I'd like to say that one benefits the other and vice versa.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. Open up the floor. Igor, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I have, hello, Aporva. I have 2 questions, so you can decide which to answer. First one is about the brand's tone, and the second one, the rules, motion rules from brand's systems or own. So the first question, which rules do you use to create a motion according to the brand's tone? How do you attach the motion to the brand's persona? The second question, what's better for a regular freelance motion designer? First one, to tune up animation to most popular design systems, or to learn to develop own animation style and motion rules?
Wow. Okay. So let's see if I can do both really quickly, if I remember them. The first one was around how do we find the relationship between the brand personality and the motion principles, right? That was your question, Igor. Yeah. So you know what? Sometimes it's just simple trial and error. So we have the strategy that we know what the brand is. So I'll give you an example. If it's something like, look, if it's something like Formula One, then intuitively, you know that there's got to be something to do with a sense of speed, a sense of inertia, a sense of direction change, coming into the pit stop, going out. You know, so they're kind of instinctive ideas. The thing is with Formula One, in terms of the strategy, it was different. It was about bringing warmth and humanity and a sense of technology, but also a sense of the celebrity and the driver, which is kind of different. So now what we're doing is marrying the two. Now I can't remember the principles, but to find them, it was quite easy to figure out, you know, inertia and speed and so on. But how then do you create a sense of warmth? You know, is it certain easing in, easing out? Is it fades and so on? So what we tend to do is do a whole bunch of tests. And then it's through a process of that feels right, that feels right, I think that feels right. And then it's curation, right? So it's curation that creates the final system. And then the ability to put it in context, you know, to try it out. What's it feel like? So it's a little bit instinct, it's a little bit insight, you know, it kind of comes together. And we're always writing at the same time. So we get the team to create motion, and then our motion designers are instinctive. They're brilliant at making things, but I'm like, okay, write what's in your head, write it as a sentence. And so we understand what you're saying, what you're thinking, and it changes it. If you try it yourself, if you took the Formula One thing and you saw it and you said, you know, I don't know, you know, staccato motion that feels very technological versus, you know, capturing the spirit of the race as the driver comes into the pit lane, it changes what you see. And moving from motion curves and so on, we like to come up with ideas. So what is the idea, and how does the motion reflect that? So there's some of the things that we do. Very quickly, your second question, I can't even remember it. Sorry.
It's about own motion rules or
Oh.
popular major systems, design systems.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. I mean, look, if you're freelance, you plug into different studios and so on. So I think understanding a wide range of things is good. I think if we're hiring for motion, there's two types of things. One is to help us roll out systems. So understanding kits and all of that sort of stuff is really good. But that's at the implement stage. I think the thing that I find interesting is the experimental stuff, the things that are original and different. So using the tools in a way that feel unexpected makes for more interesting work. So, I would always swing for that. Depends on your mindset.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question.
Stella, is your turn.
Hello. Thank
Hi.
you so much, Aporva, for being here. This has been
Sure.
super insightful. Yeah, so my question really quick, you touched on this a little bit in your presentation, but there's so many, like you said, there's so many different designs, different styles of motion and like visual design, like stop motion, 2D
Sure.
animation or 3D animation. I'm curious, like in your experience, is it more effective for brands to just stick with one design language or motion language continuously, or when do they decide to like rebrand? For example, when
Sure.
F1 asks you guys to rebrand, and how different can you go from their original brand's design? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. I think there's two sides to that. One is so when we've completed something like Formula One, then our level of consistency is really important. So they're going to use the same things in different ways for a fair amount of time, so that the fans, the people out there really understand that this is Formula One. It becomes unmistakable. So you have that level of consistency. However, if you go on their social feeds, they're using some of those things, but they have to do different campaigns, leaderboard things, new drivers, new seasons, and that's where they break from the system. But they're still within that framework that we've created. I think a good example, another example is Hulu. So we created a really tight system for that, which is the vessel, which frames content. It's all green on a black environment with a certain typeface. So that's like super consistent. It flexes like massively, but super consistent. But then when they did a brand campaign, they got different motion creatives around the world to take the logo, like MTV back in the day, and do whatever they want. It was stop motion, it was cell animation, and so on and so forth. So they do that because they're confident that their overall brand is consistent. You see, so I would say that the brand stays fairly consistent and allows to flex for different things, but it's campaigns that you can mess around and be different and expressive. And I think if we've done our job right, you should be able to do both.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Stella.
Thank you, Stella. And Aporva, I just want to add some context. As a studio actually has done some work, BN has done some work for Hulu, and we love the brand guidelines, especially the rules around the vessel, how the vessel is built. That's brilliant. And I love how to bring in back what you said before about fixed and flex. Like I feel like the rules for the vessel is fixed, but the logo animation is the flex part. So they play really well together.
Exactly right. So thanks for that. I mean, like, phew, the guidelines make sense. Thanks for the review. But thanks, Adam. But it's really nice to hear that. You're absolutely right, because they have confidence in the system. Folks like yourself can bring the flair and energy in new ways.
Awesome. Oliver, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hey, sorry, I know, so we're off time. Yeah, it's just around working globally, because I know you guys work for a lot of different companies, and I see Samsung behind, such a global brand. Do you guys find it different working for like American-based company compared to a UK-based company? Because like when I worked in London, then New York and LA and stuff like that,
Right.
it's like I seen the difference between like just time of like how much time you get in jobs with different different regions.
Sure.
I'm just wondering, have you guys found that as well?
Yeah, thanks for the question. A little bit, I think that's why we like working internationally, and congratulations for you yourself doing that. I would say it's maybe it's sort of energy, a different kind of energy. We'll give you an example. So we were lucky enough to rebrand ITVX here, and then the ITV brands in the UK. And they're like really, everyone's really into their work, but they just approach it a little bit differently in terms of the energy, the questions that they ask, the kind of detail that they go into. In the States, I think we really enjoy working with folks in the States. Well, in fact, everywhere, but they certainly lean into things in a different way. There's sort of a different kind of energy and passion. The things feel bigger because they are. I think the stakes are higher. I think because we're working with large brands and businesses, it's less the company and more the in-house teams. And the in-house teams are like this group where they're really good creatives in their own right. So, maybe we're getting the best of that experience. And two things happen. So I'll give you an example. When we were with the guys at ITV, they were really open to workshopping everything with us. So we've gone from doing those theatrical presentations to more like a weekly cadence where we show work in development. So they'll see motion studies, they'll see logo studies, and so on. So there was much more of that with ITV, which was more surprising to us at that scale. But that really helped shape it. And then what happens, you end up shaping it together. So I think there's a highly collaborative spirit on both sides of the pond, so to speak. In the US, they're kind of more sort of key kind of milestones. And I think because they have more execs, you tend to have to modulate and change the story for different people. So for the core team, you can be pretty loose. And as you move up to an exec, an SVP, and to a C-suite, the presentations get shorter and shorter. You show less, and you become more conviction-led. And the big thing, and this is probably across the world, but we certainly find it in both places, is that everyone wants to know why. Why have you chosen those colors? Why this motion? And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'd say about the stuff that we do, and maybe that might help you guys, is everyone wants a reason why we're doing things. We go, oh, this palette is beautiful, and you can get into talking about the aesthetic. But if you said, we chose this because of this reason and that reason, this strategy, that reason, we pulled the color from, a badge from 1942 and then brought it forward and so on. Those types of things are there. So the why is important. In answering your question, I feel like I haven't answered it, because what I don't want to do is throw shade at anyone. All I want to say is that in terms of your question about time, I think everyone's squeezed for time. Everyone wants everything fast. Fortunately for us, our project stretch 3, 9, 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months long. However, in those, the cadence is really fast. We're talking to clients, twice a week. We're sharing every week, which is pretty fast. And I would say, that's changing, and that's changed. And you just got to be on your game, all the time. And I'd say clients, they're under their own pressure. So one thing I said to the team, actually, let's say we're on a phase of work for 6 weeks. We're on it for 6 weeks, but we might meet our client once every week. So for them, it's 6 one-hour meetings. So we're like, for that, we have to kind of condense our energy and our insight and storytelling into these like little moments. So I'd say, each country, each environment, each company is very different. And you have to understand the the diplomacy you need to articulate stuff to different teams. But I think everyone's just into it. They want to do a good job. And some folks are really into the detail, and some folks want the big picture. And I think it's just, good experience and practice to meet all those kinds of people. I feel like I haven't answered your question, but
No worries. No, I know it's a tricky one because it's just for working internationally and stuff like that. It's you just come across different people, so it's like it's just great to hear your insights.
It's good to be a student of people, be fluent in people is something we like to say, and by meeting lots, you start to be able to adapt and mirror. I think it's probably one of the most unspoken about things about getting great work in the world, is the ability to articulate your ideas in a way that other people buy and understand, and that they feel excited about. Doesn't matter how good the work is, the ability to listen, active listen and respond and so on is a real skill. And that's why, great work enters the world, because somehow you've all spoken the right language.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, the last question is from Rachana.
Hi.
Hi.
To what extent do you recommend using AI in our creative process? So, because I feel like some studios and companies condemn it and some condone it. So it feels like a very double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think we've been wrestling with this, as many people have. I think you have to think about it ethically. Like there's a lot of challenges about how AI has scraped everything, and hasn't necessarily given in the right people the right credit. I think for studios or individually, it's where and how in the process you use it. If you haven't got any ideas and you go, hey AI, I haven't got anything, kick something up for me, maybe that's okay. But I think it's one of many things, flicking through a book, reading some poetry, taking a walk, it's a point of influence. I think if you have an idea and you want AI to help you manifest that, then maybe that's okay. To test things, I think, as a testing ground, that's fine. I think the closer you get to finishing something, that's when you have to be careful. And I'll get to that in a sec. The other thing you have to be careful about is believing that. So one thing we're talking to the team about is, let's say they found a photo, some art direction, a piece of design, and they throw it into ChatGPT or Midjourney or wherever and say, hey, make another version of this like this. I think there's a danger in that, because very quickly you'll forget where you got that original piece from, and you'll start to believe you came up with the idea. And the thing is, that's happening already. People see stuff on Behance or Pinterest or whatever, or Savvy, and go, oh, that's good, maybe I could do that. That's not really kind of creating new design. That's just going, well, they did that, that was good, I'll do something similar. So I think there's a danger for AI to homogenize design. So if you use it to amplify original thoughts, or you fuse it with things that you've made originally elsewhere, then I think it's good. But yeah, you got to be careful when it comes to the final thing, because who owns that? How is it created? Can you pass it off as your own? I mean, where we've used it is, if we've used it, we say we've used it. We did it with a client for property business, and the whole thing was around innovation and AI. We just worked with one of the largest AI companies in the world. Maybe that's okay, because it's using their models. So I would say it's not that you shouldn't use it, but I would say be mindful how you use it, and don't believe that just because it's made in that, that it's original, So yeah, use it with care, use it ethically. Don't pass it off for your own. mix it with other references. All that stuff is really important.
Thank you.
Oh. All right.
Thanks,
Well,
Ricardo.
thank you so much, Aporva, for giving us such great insights today. And thanks everyone for attending. So I want to share some info for everyone. If you really want to learn about the DixonBaxi way, go to DixonBaxi.com and go to DixonBaxi way. There are there are 3 seasons with episodes to watch, and I think you would get really great insight to the inner workings that Aporva has been talking about. And also, of course, follow Aporva on LinkedIn. He's got great insights into the process about the industry overall. And thank you everyone for attending today. And Aporva, thank you so much. I think we really learned quite a lot, not just students, I learned a ton myself as well.
Amazing.
And,
Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate you all for joining. As I say, sorry, Sai couldn't be here, but we both, shout out to this whole organization and your endeavor. I think it's amazing, and thanks for joining and taking interest. I think a big part of life is being curious, and this is a big part of that. Also, we are looking for motion designers at the moment, so you'll see some ads around, and if you're interested in collaborating with us, as we don't say freelance, we say experts. As an expert, then also sign up.
Awesome. Read the description carefully, everyone. That's the one cue that I would give as a studio owner. Please don't just blindly apply. Please read the description carefully.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, coming up next month, we have Jason Cook. He will be he's a director of both motion design and live action. So he's done amazing. He has an amazing career, just going back and forth between the two seamlessly, and that's very hard to do. So join us on September 18th if you can, and check out the next episode. Thank you so much, Aporva.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.